Early June 2021 month. Sverdlovsk region, the town of Mikhailovsk. A Renault Sandero is parked near the local dam. The car is locked with no visible damage. The interior is clean. Its owner, a 35-year-old woman, hasn't answered her phone for several days. Her mobile phone is turned off. At first, her relatives try to get in touch themselves. A day passes, then a second. On June 2, the missing woman's mother contacts law enforcement and files an official report. The standard search procedure is launched. Inspecting the abandoned foreign car yields no answers. There are no signs of a struggle or abandoned belongings around it. The car is simply neatly parked by the water. Detectives move on to the next step. They request phone billing records and account transaction history. And here we encounter the first major inconsistency. Compare two facts. The woman's device is not registering on the network. She is physically absent, yet her bank card starts showing activity at this very time. Bank documents show that on May 30, money was debited from her electronic account. Moreover, the payment wasn't a single transaction, but split into 3 consecutive stages. Why divide one check into several small ones? The answer lies in the mechanics of bank terminals. When a certain amount is exceeded, a system requires a PIN code. The person tapping the card to the terminal right now does not know those 4 digits. They carefully keep purchases under the contactless payment limit. The car is at the dam, the owner is nowhere to be found, but someone is methodically draining her account. Operatives identify the missing person. It is Nastya Pikhteeva, who had arrived in the Urals from Perm. Back home, a 3-year-old son is waiting for her return. Interviewing relatives and studying her tourist experience provides the investigation with a clear profile. Anastasia is no amateur, likely to accidentally get lost or panic in the woods. She has been going on hikes regularly since the age of 18 and knows how to survive in the wild. On this trip, the woman brought professional equipment, including a kayak and a tent worth over 200,000 rubles. Investigators reconstruct her original plan step by step. The logic of her movements becomes clear. Having left her vehicle at the dam, the tourist set off on foot for the town of Nizhny Sergiy. It was from there that her solo water route along the Saga River began. The final point of the journey was the village of Arakayevo. Take a look at the map of this area. The waterway passes through dense forests and sections of a nature park. The woman was fully equipped and physically prepared to cover the distance. If she didn't reach the finish line, it means her journey was cut short somewhere along the shoreline soon. Route analysis narrows down the search area. Police are no longer looking for a person blindly throughout the entire region. A specific sector is formed for search teams, the Saga riverbed and its adjacent territories. Having received the bank account details, operatives establish the exact address of the terminal where the withdrawals took place. It is an ordinary grocery store located in Nizhny Sergiy. The investigative team arrives at the scene and immediately seizes CCTV footage from May 30. Consider the detail captured by the lens above the checkout counter. 2 people approach the counter. This is definitely not the missing traveler whose route search teams are currently combing through. On the video are a man and a young woman. It is the companion who holds someone else's plastic card and taps it against the terminal. The assortment of their purchases is quite specific. On the belt are cognac, beer, and snacks. The pair behaves absolutely calmly, picks up the bags with alcohol, and walks out onto the street. The man's face is caught on camera clearly enough to initiate an identification procedure. Detectives run his appearance through departmental databases. A system produces a match. Local criminal investigation officers instantly recognize the person on the screen. And at that very second, the status of the investigation changes drastically. The routine search for a lost person turns into a high-risk operation because the identified buyer is already on a wanted list. The man from the surveillance cameras is 43-year-old local resident Alexei Yeremyev. A query of his records in the Interior Ministry's databases yields a voluminous file. The operatives are not facing a random passerby, but an experienced repeat offender. In total, this man has spent 17 years in a penal colony. 8 of those were served at the high-security correctional facility IK2. The list of his past crimes includes theft, robbery, and rape. Take note of a clear failure in the control system. How could a person with such an impressive criminal past move freely around the city and visit supermarkets? The Carnier's court materials are pulled up. It turns out that in the spring, Yeremyev became a defendant in a new criminal case. Attempted violence against a minor. Yeah. Despite the gravity of the charge and his previous convictions, the court did not send him to a pre-trial detention center. House arrest was set as a restrictive measure, but the documents show a different, even more unusual version of events. The prisoner was supposed to be under 24-hour surveillance using an electronic bracelet, but the tracking device was never put on him. The official reason from the Federal Penitentiary Service is a medical contraindication. It turns out that the man had previously tried to hide from justice in the woods, suffering severe frostbite on his legs, leading to tissue necrosis. Attaching a bracelet to the damaged limbs proved physically impossible. Let's roll back the chronology of events by 10 days. May 19, 2021. Inspection officers arrive for a routine check at the apartment where Yerameyev is serving house arrest. The premises are empty. The suspect left the premises without any obstacles. The next day, May 20, the court officially declares him wanted. Investigation puts the obtained information together. The tourist has vanished without a trace, and her bank account is now controlled by a fugitive criminal accused of serious crimes who has absolutely nothing to lose. Having established the identity of the fugitive, the detectives immediately identify his companion from the Stor videos. The young woman confidently paying for cognac with someone else's credit card is 26-year-old Olga Vasilyova, the recidivist's live-in partner, the recidivist ma. Let's ask a purely pragmatic investigative question. The man left the apartment on his own on May 19. Transactions on the missing traveler's card were recorded only on the 30th. Where was this couple for more than 10 days, and what did they live on while being on the run without a legal source of income? The answers found in the police duty reports for the neighboring districts. Detectives pull the database of property crimes for the last 2 weeks and notice an obvious pattern. Starting from the 20th of May, a spike in similar offenses is recorded near the village of Polovinka and the settlement of Novaya Yelnya. Unknown individuals are methodically breaking into vacant private houses and workers' portable cabins. Primarily food, warm clothing, and basic survival items are disappearing from the premises. If you map the coordinates of these break-ins, a clear area of movement for the suspects emerges. Both settlements are located right next to the borders of the large Oleni Ruchi Natural Park, and the fugitives did not leave for another region. They set up a camp right in the forest belt, occasionally making forays for provisions. It is here that forensic geometry brings 2 lines of investigation to one point. Take a look at the large-scale map. The riverbed, along which the owner of the stolen card was supposed to kayak, runs exactly through the territory of this same nature park. The trajectory of the hiding criminals and the water route of the solo expedition physically crossed in one taiga square. The analysis of the paper reports yields results. The search zone narrows from the scale of the region to a specific forest tract. The scale of the operation changes. Disparate agencies and volunteers unite into a single coordination headquarters. Joining the criminal investigation officers are diving, service specialists, volunteers from the Perm-Poisk and Proriv search squads, as well as local trackers who know the terrain thoroughly. The search geometry is now built extremely accurately. The retail outlet that recorded the transaction is located exactly 5 kilometers from the northern border of the nature park. This becomes the main starting point. From here, the combined squads begin systematic movement deep into the forest. The specifics of a taiga search dictate strict procedural rules. Searching for tracks in such a dense forest chaotically is just a waste of time. Therefore, the people line up in long human chains. They comb the forest belt meter by meter, moving strictly parallel to the river flow. The main emphasis is placed on checking tourist campsites. Every old fire pit, abandoned shelter, and any flat area suitable for setting up a tent camp is subject to inspection. The briefing for the search groups takes into account the latest operational data. The participants comb the rugged terrain with a clear understanding of the threat level. In this forest square is not just a lost person, but a fugitive hiding from justice, ready for extreme measures. The suspects have less and less room to maneuver. The ring around the central part of the reserve is methodically tightening with every hour the headquarters works. On June 3, the tactic of thorough combing pays off. Criminal investigation detectives, moving through the dense thicket of the park, come across a hidden forest camp. Before them is not a hastily built hut, but a modern camping tent. A quick check of the equipment characteristics confirms the working theory. This is the very expensive gear with which the woman went on her river trip. The suspects are right inside the shelter. Police officers block the perimeter and begin the detention procedure. However, the fugitive does not plan to surrender. At this moment, unforeseen circumstances arise. The pair was not hiding in the taiga alone. The man is guarded by a large German shepherd. Seeing the officer in uniform, he makes an instant decision, sicking the animal on the authorized agents and giving a clear command, attack. The dog lunges at the police. A direct physical threat arises. The officers draw their service weapons. The first warning shot is fired into the air. The animal does not stop. The next bullet is fired to take down the shepherd. Only after the use of firearms is the resistance finally suppressed. The fugitive and his companion are forced to the ground, handcuffed, and escorted from the forest straight to the police station's detention center. Take a look at how a man with a solid prison background builds his defense. He is detained in the remote taiga. He is literally living in the missing person's tent. There is someone else's plastic in his pockets. Yet during the very first interrogations, he shows investigators absolute calm and confidence. His testimony boils down to monotonous denial. The detainee claims he was just walking, found the abandoned equipment, took it for survival, and has no idea what happened to the tourist. The investigation has the detainees and the seized items, but the main answer is still missing. The owner of the tent is still listed as missing, and her physical whereabouts remain unknown. While the detained recidivist monotonously insists on his story of a chance forest find, forensic experts begin a detailed inventory of the properties seized at the scene. Direct evidence is documented inside the tent. Among the appropriated items, officers find the missing woman's turned-off mobile phone. The very same bank card used for the transactions at the supermarket is also documented here. The total value of the seized camping gear is estimated at 11,000 rubles. The presence of personal electronics and payment methods in the fugitive's pockets completely destroys the original cover story. Taking abandoned fabric for shelter from the rain is one thing, but intentionally appropriating all valuables and means of communication is a completely different level of criminal intent. In parallel, joint squads continue to comb the coastline. On June 4th, around 4:30 p.m. local time, the search team reports the results of the area inspection to the coordination headquarters. Near the northern border of the park, in a wooded area away from the main water route, a body is discovered. It was not just left in the open, but deliberately hidden in the brush-ish. The inspection and identification procedure puts an end to the search case. The missing traveler has been found. Try to analyze the physics of this space from a forensic perspective. Concealing a corpse requires significant physical effort and time. The perpetrator was not in a state of passion. He methodically covered his tracks, masking the crime scene to ensure his own safe escape. A forensic medical expert arrives at the location. An initial visual examination records multiple injuries of completely different natures on the body. It is this conclusion that forces investigators to sharply change the direction of their work. A reasonable doubt arises regarding the mechanics of the attack. Could one armed attacker have inflicted such a variety of injuries while simultaneously fully suppressing the resistance of a physically strong tourist? This forensic paradox changes the procedural status of the second person involved in the case. Until this moment, the 26-year-old cohabitant of the recidivist was viewed by the investigation solely as a witness or an accomplice to the theft of money from the bank account. Now, the nature of the evidence discovered directly indicates that her role in the events of that night could have been much more active. The results of the preliminary body examination reached the desk of the lead investigator, and this is exactly where forensics begins to work against the detainees. The physical evidence categorically stops matching their original story. Consider the mechanics of dealing with suspects at this stage. The detectives have two subjects who are sticking to a rehearsed version about stumbling upon someone else's camp. But now the system has its trump card, the location where the body was hidden and the nature of the wounds. The detainees are separated into different rooms. A process of cross-examination begins where every word is checked against the findings of medical examiners. At the same time, a series of urgent tests is ordered. Specialists perform molecular genetic analysis on the seized items and a forensic medical analysis of the injuries. The goal is singular: to find biological traces and precisely identify the weapons used to inflict the blows. Under the pressure of this scientific data, the wall of silence begins to crack. Realizing that the DNA traces found on their clothing and in the tent cannot be explained by a simple walk, subjects begin to change their testimony. A key procedural shift occurs. Analysis of the victim's injuries and new details from interrogations prove that restraining a resisting person of this build alone was physically impossible. The status of the recidivist young companion is officially reclassified. From a silent witness and bank card thief, she turns into an accomplice to a major felony. The investigation establishes that at the time of the attack, the young woman was at the very epicenter of events, physically controlling the victim and taking an active part in the violence. The scattered fragments of the investigation, phone logs, routes, tracks on the ground, seized knives, and genetic findings finally synchronize. There are no more contradictions. The task force receives a dry, minute-by-minute account backed by documents and expert reports of exactly how events unfolded in the deep taiga on the night of May 29 to 30. Let's return to the events of the night of May 29 to 30. Criminal case materials allow for the reconstruction of the crime scenario with extreme precision. In a state of severe alcohol intoxication, the fugitives scour the forest area and stumble upon a tourist camp. Inside, a person is sleeping. Packing in the confined space of a tent is difficult, so the pair employs a tactic of deception. They wake the woman and lure her outside. The pretext is an urgent but false message. Unknown individuals are allegedly stealing her kayak right now. As soon as the equipment owner steps into an open area, the physical assault begins. The man is holding a heavy wooden stick. The forensic report records the brutal math of this attack. The victim is struck at least 9 deliberate blows to the head. Another 51 blows are inflicted on the torso, arms, and legs. Evaluate the mechanism of the crime from the standpoint of complicity. The recidivist companion does not stand aside. At the moment of the beating, she firmly holds the resisting victim by the arms completely, blocking any chance to defend herself or escape. Then, the attackers squeeze the woman's neck, cutting off her oxygen supply. Deprived of the ability to move, the victim is subjected to sexual violence. Both subjects participate in these unlawful acts. The pair has no intention of leaving a live witness capable of positively identifying them. A knife is used to ensure her elimination. Experts would later document 3 deep knife wounds to the neck and 3 more behind the left ear. Having confirmed the victim was dead, the perpetrators began cleaning up the area. They dragged the body away from the open ground and carefully concealed it in the thickets. They packed up the victim's tent and took the expensive gear, equipment, and bank card with them. Immediately after hiding the evidence, the criminals headed toward the settlement to buy more alcohol on someone else's dime. The crime scene has been fully reconstructed. The perpetrators are currently in detention cells. The weapons have been seized. Biological traces have been documented. It would seem the operational work is finished and the case just needs to be passed to the prosecutor. The investigative committee has opened an entirely new vector of inquiry. Now, tough questions are being directed not at the detained criminals, but at state agencies. Let's analyze the situation from the perspective of departmental oversight. The presence of a highly dangerous individual with a violent criminal past in a tourist zone is not a coincidence, but the direct result of specific bureaucratic decisions. Investigators have initiated the seizure of documents from judicial authorities and the penitentiary service. The main task is to find out who personally signed the documents that allowed the suspect to remain unsupervised. Reviewing the duty instructions at the penitentiary service and the Supreme Court materials reveals a major failure. The paperwork establishes a clear protocol. If the technical department could not attach a tracking bracelet due to the detainee's physiological issues, the system was obligated to immediately apply alternative monitoring methods or urgently petition for the man's transfer to a specialized prison hospital where security is provided. None of these compensatory actions were taken. The man was simply left at his registered address, relying solely on his word of honor. As a result, staff inaction has escalated into a separate legal proceeding. The investigative committee has officially announced an investigation under the charge of negligence. Interrogations of officials have begun. The focus of attention has shifted sharply from the forest taiga to government offices. A direct causal link is being documented. Compliance with basic security protocols at the stage of selecting preventive measures would have guaranteed that the paths of the recidivist and the lone traveler in the nature park would never have crossed.